So today we have Stephen joining us. So it's Jess and me, Christina, and Stephen. Did I tell you guys somebody thought that I was Misty because of the recording?
It says your name on the thing.
Yeah, they were like,
It
"Oh,
says
are
her
you
name on
not Misty?" Because it says that on the thing, or on the, oh, I just switched it over. So like on the speaker view, somebody was like, "I thought you were Mystery Ravella this whole time." It's like, "Oh, no." So Coach Christina, Coach Jess, and Coach Stephen is with us today, and we're going to be chatting about what to do after a dieting phase when we're just living our life and we're trying to maintain everything we've accomplished. Maybe we've got goals that we're going to roll into, like that we want to keep moving towards, but we're coming out of like a lifestyle phase cut kind of situation and not something as extreme as like a prep. And then what do we do with our hands now when we're not used to super serious dieting phase anymore?
You, all of us on Zoom, raising our hands.
Please watch on YouTube.
I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
Awkward moment.
Just put them down. It's fine.
I was going to say, we have to have awkward moments. Steven's on.
Listen, if we
That's
don't
like what
have
it's
at
all
least
about,
seven,
yo.
yes, we should start a tally. That's number one for the day.
That's not even that awkward. That's just a movie quote. That's a guy thing. That's normal.
See? Yeah. I'm here for it. So the reason I wanted to talk about this one is because our transformation challenge just ended, and there's a lot of people who did some incredible things. I was absolutely blown away by the number of my guided coaching clients who wound up losing like 20 pounds, which if somebody came to me and was like, Christina, can you help me lose 20 pounds in 3 months? I'd be like, that's a little crazy. That seems like a lot. And even though I was like checking in with these people every other week, and I would be looking at the chart and like the overall numbers when we did like our final check-in, and I would look at stuff, it was like, holy shit, look what we did. Like,
That's awesome.
This is crazy. And so a lot of people, and going through the Facebook group, there was a lot of people who just absolutely killed it. But there's a lot of, what do I do now that I don't have a date that I'm chasing and that I'm not trying to like win something and I want to keep my results. And then I think, kind of goes in line with our recent episode of like Halloween, Thanksgiving, things like that are coming up right now. And so they have this like immediate challenge when you're kind of at like a pretty vulnerable state post challenge, because they had this big group where there's a lot of people all racing in one direction, right? And then now everyone's going to kind of disperse and they don't have their friends to chat with as much anymore about all doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you can still create that community and that next goal idea, I think. And like, that's why this time can be challenging for a lot of people. It's because, okay, now we have this big date, like you're very emotionally invested, and now that's kind of come and gone. And a lot of times people really struggle with not having a new goal. And so I think a post-diet phase is really important to just create a new goal, or what's next, right? Maybe it is like getting your calories back up so you can have more flexibility around the holidays. Like that would be a great goal to have. Maybe it's get stronger again, maybe because you lost like some weight, but then you maybe also lost some strength, or maybe like a performance related goal is a really great idea, especially around this time, like post diet, because you're so focused on that scale that new goal is a really important part, right? Because people, again, what now? It's like, well, let's make new goals. Let's be excited about the next phase of your journey. And then you can start kind of putting building blocks towards that new goal.
One of the other big things too is like, one of the cool things about the Transformation Challenge is the Facebook, right? So you get to kind of see other people that are right next to you, alongside of you, doing what you're doing. Some of them maybe a few steps ahead, some of them maybe falling down and having to get back up. So like you get to see that everybody else is just as human as you are. And so it really creates this nice supportive environment of, maybe the people that are a couple steps ahead of you are like, hey, come on, like we can make this up, like we can go. And maybe when we fall down, the people that are still standing are like, hey, like I've been there. You saw it like a couple of weeks ago. Like we're going to get back up and we can still make progress and we can still do this. But I think some of it is continuing to keep yourself surrounded with those people. For me, I think one of the hardest part is I agree. People are they tend to be good with goals and timelines when there is one.
Yeah.
But once that's gone, it's very easy to get back to like the normal life. And a lot of times for most of us, the normal life, the people we see at work, the people we see at school, church, whatever, whatever places you go, they're not necessarily about that lifestyle the same. So it makes it a lot more difficult and challenging to like upkeep those lifestyle habits and changes that you're trying to like put in during that dieting phase. Because just because we're done dieting doesn't mean we should stop eating vegetables and fruit, right? It doesn't mean we should stop eating lean proteins. Like those things continue on to after the diet. And those are things that help keep us healthy. Those are things that help us maintain healthy weights and to maintain the weight loss that we work so hard for. But I think, some of it is also like finding those places, finding those groups of people that are going to, challenge you to stay on and to stay in a good spot and to keep doing the things that are beneficial for your goals and your health long term. Because the other thing is very rarely do we realize that like my goal isn't just to lose the weight. Like we get I just need to hit this weight. Yeah, but what happens after that? Do you want to stay at that weight? Do you want to regain 10 pounds after that? Do you want to regain all that weight and more? All right. Like those after the fact questions tend not to come up. But it's definitely something we still want to think about, and keeping those healthy habits, keeping those, hey, I want to continue lifting because it makes me feel strong. So that makes me feel capable and able and good about myself. Like we want to keep all those healthy habits in because those are the same things that help us to keep the weight off.
Yeah, I think you hear a lot about, America has a weight loss problem. And I would disagree because I think it's more of like a weight maintenance. And exactly like you said, Stephen, like a health, just long-term happiness and feeling good and confident and strong, and having good bowel movements and like sleeping well and having nice skin because you're hydrated. Right.
Wait.
Like those.
I was told girls don't have bowel movements. That's not a thing.
It's just glitter. Like in the was it the Trolls movie when he farts and glitter goes everywhere? That's all that happens.
I don't know. I haven't seen it, but like, sure. That makes things messy though. I guess if it's in the toilet.
Right. It would have to be like the formed. I mean, we could go down and like see.
We're obviously talking
number
about
2. There we go. Right, number 2. Yeah, I just had this conversation with one of my clients who like we've actually been working really hard on the maintenance phase for her because she's previously done gone back and forth a lot, where if she gets uncomfortable in one sort of phase, then she'll hop real quick to the next one and then kind of go back and forth before she can really make any ground with either of them. And, we've talked to like, she'll ask about fat loss phases and I keep being like, I think we need more time and maintenance. And a lot of it is the mental part of it that I'm like, I think we need to get comfy in what this feels like and not be chasing that next diet phase. And that is something that, as much as I love the transformation challenges and like those were some of the things that got me started like many years ago where I would get super excited about them. It does always kind of make me nervous having like more than one per year. And I'm also on team, like, let's have more than 2 per year. But then like where I get nervous with them is, that like people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to reverse diet. Like the person who asked this question said, I'm only reverse dieting until the next one in February. And so then, we have to think about like, it shouldn't always be a countdown to the next like dieting phase with stuff. And a big thing for me, because the same person had also asked, like, do we need to change our training? And like, you guys brought that up with like, what do I do with my training? Like leaning into that a bit more during the reverse dieting phase. And what I talked to my client about was that like, she was like, I feel like when I go into these workouts, like I'm not seeing the changes from the like 4 to 5 days per week that I want to be seeing. So this is pointless. And I was like, well, there's the issue though. If you're going into your workouts and the only thing that you're looking to get out of it is a change in the mirror, then like you're going to be pissed off forever, right? Because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 weeks. Like for a lot of people, like she's been training for a long time, so it's not going to be this monumental change immediately. And like when you start to actually see that stuff happen is when you fall in love with the activity, whether it's you actually love training or you just love how you feel afterwards and you just gut through it to get it done with. You have to go into that exercise for something different than I better fucking look better after this, because you're not going to get anywhere, right? Like that's not going to probably be the effective kind of training that we're looking for.
Especially post diet. Like I don't know. I think it can come from like a healthy place. It can absolutely come from a very not healthy place. But it can come from a place of like, ooh, I want to like get my glutes bigger, or I want to have pumpkin delts, or like whatever that is. The thing with me in like a post diet phase is getting my clients health back.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes like you just get really tired and fatigued, and then training sucks. Like you go to the gym and you're like, I'm tired. Or you're not hitting the strength PRs that you are anymore, or whatever. Like the post diet phase is a health phase. It's like, let's get feeling good again. Let's get you eating a little bit more food again. Let's not have you doing so much cardio. Let's work on that mental health place in terms of like maybe a shift of goals, or what it looks like in a new body, like sustaining that. Because before we like, then we can get to a maintenance phase, or then we can get to whatever. But I think like that post diet phase is more health related, both physiological, but like mental too. Because you're right, that aspect is important.
And I think it's important to remember, not everybody's going to be in this like unhealthy phase at the end of the diet, right? Mm-hmm. Especially say you're an individual that had more weight to lose. You're probably not going to have to diet necessarily as hard. You're probably going to lose more weight quickly. And you'll probably be able to maintain that with the same numbers for a longer amount of time. Mm-hmm. So obviously, when you're trying to get to like the leaner stuff, the crazy stuff, it gets more difficult. When you've been dieting and trying to do this over and over again, it gets more difficult. It doesn't necessarily mean that because you dieted, you're unhealthy, or that you're in an unhealthy spot. So I do think that is like an important piece of the puzzle to remember. Mm-hmm. It means you might need some time to recover from that, but that's just the same as you might need time to recover from your training session if you trained really hard.
Right.
We did something that created a stimulus, and we have to do the right things to adapt to that. So yeah, if you've been dieting really hard for a long time, you might not be in the healthiest spot. If you haven't been dieting too hard, but you've been seeing good progress and things are going, that might not necessarily apply to you.
Yeah, I've had lots of clients where we did, like I just have a client, we did a fat loss phase, but she's in a great body composition. So we're building her calories back up, but like her weight is maintaining. And she's just, again, like getting stronger, and she's in a good place. I've also had a client who we did a bit of a fat loss phase, but they were quite overweight to begin with. And so the fat loss phase was truly just actually establishing habits. And so then we got to this place where we had been like incorporating a little bit more cardio and doing, again, just like focusing on behaviors, like having vegetables and having protein at each meal, getting to bed at a good time, moving your body throughout the day. And they had been seeing progress. And then we had this just some life stuff come up, and I went, okay, cool. Let's just hold with where we're at, because they weren't at low calorie. They were still being really successful with just their habits and behaviors, and overall health, excuse me, health like was in a good place. So we just held that, and they were able to hold it and maintain. Actually, they continued to slightly lose weight, but it really depends on where your starting point, and then when your like end point of your fat loss phases. Because Stephen, you're correct. Like it's very different if you end up getting like, kind of lean, you're doing a photo shoot or something like that, versus you come from, being overweight by 100 pounds. you maybe need to do like various phases.
Yeah. But even then too, like I still think it's a good idea to at least incorporate something that kind of breaks it up, mostly for that mental aspect of it, because I think it's really easy for the diet fatigue to set in. And so I had some of my guided coaching clients from the Transformation Challenge decide to stay on. And some of them, we weren't in a crazy place and we were still getting easy progress. And so I had said, like, you know, let's ride this out until you start reporting that this is feeling a bit more difficult. But like realistically, let's say we're not doing this for another like 4 to 6 weeks. Like we'll stop after that. And then we're going to take some time to focus on something different. Because I think that, you know, even if you've got more to go and you still have that stamina there, I would much rather stop it at an intelligent place where we're in control, as opposed to getting to the place where I get an email where it's like, I know everything was going great, but this weekend I went completely off the rails and ate my entire pantry and I hate myself and I don't know what to do now. And so trying to stop before that happens. And that's part of, you know, this first weekend post challenge was like an interesting experiment. I was really excited with how pretty much everybody handled it, where I told them like, go have an untracked meal. Or some people had a fully untracked day, depending on where they were at, but it was either a meal or an untracked day. And then let's hit these numbers afterwards. And it went beautifully for pretty much everyone, like in that situation. And I think that that's something that can be really scary, especially since, you know, like with the challenge, we put out some ideas that people can use as like meal plans. And if somebody's been very tightly tied to that and they've seen a lot of success and then now they're done with it, and maybe they're like, well, you know, I'm not trying to win a challenge anymore. And so I don't want to eat this meal plan. But then it's also this like, what do I eat? Like, what do I do? Or if I'm supposed to reverse diet, or no, you know, the big one, the term diet break. Where they're like, well, I'm going to take a diet break. So I'm going on a vacation and I'm just not going to track anything and like things like that. And it's like,
I mean, that's a diet break. Sure.
oh, it's definitely a diet break, but like there's some nuance there, right? Where, I mean, depending on the person, like one of my clients, I think that she flew out to the Maldives like today or yesterday, going on a 12-day all-inclusive vacation. And we went over what could happen and whether or not we were okay emotionally with that, and like how to plan for when she gets back. It's not something I would usually recommend, but you know, it goes back to how crazy did things have to get? Where are we at mentally with that? And I think, you know, having realistic expectations too, that's another thing for us to like help them kind of understand, coming out of any diet, whether you lost, some of these transformation challenge people lost like 40 pounds, like in 90 days. You saw more? Oh my!
I think that I saw somebody that lost 70.
Just in this challenge?
Yeah.
That's a second grader. I have no idea how.
No, I think I do. I think I remember seeing that too. And his pictures were insane. So, you know, whether you're doing that, wow, 40 to 70 pounds in 90 days, which is bonkers. Or maybe this was the first time you were able to stick to something and you lost 5 pounds in 90 days, which I had clients that did that too. And it was huge for just the fact
I had clients that reverse dieted
up to it. Yeah, those are always fun too, right? Or they maintain. When we got into
keto, that was his goal. He came off keto for the transformation challenge. So we transitioned him out of keto, worked calories up. He literally still lost weight, but just got leaner and more defined and more muscular the entire time. It was great.
I love that.
Way better workouts. You can get Jess and I started on the keto train. Like that's a whole other tangent we can go on. But the expectations for when you do shift gears. So like, how do you guys set people up for that, where maybe they've never come out of a dieting phase successfully, and so maybe they're extra nervous about that, or you know, we put out this information about how there are the unicorns who continue to lose weight as we give them food. So then everyone says like, oh, so this is the diet where you feed me more and I get leaner, right? And it's like, that would be wonderful, but I can't promise it. So like, how do you set up those expectations for people?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one is talking to people about their specific circumstances, right? Most people probably aren't going to lose weight in a reverse diet. My experience is that, yeah, I'm sure there's some unicorns, or I like to call them the platypus, the platypi. That's not the right term, but just the people that, for whatever reason, they're responding so much better. But I think oftentimes what it is they're more consistent. Sometimes what it'll be is they're now able to manage their stress because they're not putting all this dietary stress on themselves as well. Yeah. So now they're sleeping better. Now they're able to be consistent. Now they're able to drink water, those kind of things. But there's, and I think there's this misconception, right? That fit people live different lives in like the bulking and off season and then the dieting phases. And yeah, some of them do. But those are also the people who tend to have much larger weight swings. And so, we definitely romanticize that a lot with some of like the physique athletes and stuff over time. And I think that that's had a big impact on people. But I think the truth is that the same things that help you to be successful in the dieting phase are these same things that help you to be successful in your normal everyday life. It's, hey, probably staying with pretty consistent meals that you enjoy, at least for the most part, and switching them up every once in a while. Like, it's not sexy, like how I keep and maintain weight. I eat the same breakfast, or I switch it up between maybe 2 or 3 different options that I know and I'm very well familiar with and I enjoy. I do the same thing for lunch, right? So maybe I'll switch my dinner up more often, but I'm not overcomplicating the process. I make it simple and convenient. And so the same things that you're doing in your diet phase, like when the diet's over, we don't want to just go off and go on vacation and go to the buffet and start down in burgers and fries and all this stuff. You say, okay, well, how do we now look at where our calories are at or where our cardio is at and make improvements to those so that I'm getting enough calories in to recover from training and to live life and enjoy the experiences with people I want to be around. And that I'm not having to do all the cardio and stuff. So I can, think more clearly, that kind of stuff. Like, how do I just kind of tweak what I'm doing in a manageable, convenient way to better support that, which oftentimes just means more calories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I usually give a very broad 4 weeks to 8 weeks, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. It really usually depends on where you're ending, how the fat loss phase went, how much weight you lost, where you were starting from, how your mental state is. But I very similar to what Stephen said, it's just a continuation of what you've been doing, but you just get to now eat a little bit more calories. That doesn't mean that you're going and getting donuts every day now. I mean, it could, maybe that's fitting within your macros, but that's probably also not checking the boxes in terms of your produce intake and protein and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like you get to now do less cardio, right? So now you're less stressed. I have a lot of clients where I'm like, hey, what's your job doing right now? Or are you going back into school? Or maybe this is a busy time with your family and you can focus on being a parent and all of that kind of stuff. But it's not sexy, but it's the same stuff. You're still prioritizing your training. You're still going in the gym and you're training hard. You're still drinking your water, right? It's a lot of the same stuff. You just have more time to give back to whatever your life is. It's more like life gain time because you're not doing as much cardio, and you possibly have a little bit more flexibility within your macros because now you get to eat more. So maybe down the road, you start incorporating that date night that you kind of put on the back burner during your fat loss phase. Now that you've built up your calories, your body's more resilient to deal with, the higher calories or the higher sodium that's in that one meal. And it's one meal and it's not a big deal. And then you move on, right? But your body's more resilient to that now. Whereas before you were dieting, you were doing more cardio. That was, a little bit more challenging. So it's the same stuff. And then it's the same stuff when you maintain.
Yeah. And I think sometimes for people, it can be hard to want to accept that, right? That like, you have to embrace it, like fully, not kind of. I mean, I guess kind of.
Off mute and laugh.
Huh?
Oh, Stephen's on mute. I'm like, take yourself off mute and laugh freely.
My laugh is too evil geniusy for it. I can't just let it be.
Like the icon meals, like I will talk to people about those, and like I genuinely have one like every day, because then I don't have to think about stuff, and that makes me happy. And like I know it's going to check certain boxes for me. I know, like, because of taking the kids to school and stuff like that, my breakfast is pretty much decided for me every day, because I don't have time for anything else than grabbing like granola bars and a protein shake, and I'll have a banana so that I can like, okay, one thing of fruit is done for the day. And, so I am very much on autopilot for those 2 meals. They take zero thought beyond like, oh shit, did I grab that before I got in the car? And when am I going to find time to like shove this in my face between emails or something like that? Like that's the only thing I'm thinking about. And, then dinner, like Stephen brought up, can be more flexible. It can be more interesting. And I've gotten to a place where for the most part, like I don't really even track those anymore, like at this point, because I keep the other stuff so in line. But like that took years for me to be like mentally comfortable with, and to not be like, for fear of the fact that if I wasn't watching it all the time, that I would go overboard. And I think a lot of that came from packing the dieting phases, like one right after the other and stuff. So then there was that like, well, if my fitness pal doesn't know about it, no one knows about it. And it's like, well, your body still does, you're not really hiding it from anybody. And so I think that accepting the fact that you're going to have to keep doing the things you did to lose the weight for a good period of time. And like one of the things that I'll tell clients is like that we need to work on that for the same amount of time that we spent dieting, at least, if not more.
I was going to say
right?
at least double.
Yeah, because for the most part, I would say pretty much everyone I worked with through this challenge, if we were to start a reverse diet to get to maintenance, it is going to take us at least that long to get to a place where I want them to then maintain. Then we have to hang out in that land for a while before we can go down. So you can look at the reverse diet as like, okay, well, the challenge ended on the 15th. I started reversing on the 16th, but that doesn't mean that your body's happy and in maintenance land, or like mentally that you're ready for the next one, right? Like we have to build up, get to that happy place, hang out there, and then we might be able to find more success with stuff. And that's where I get nervous with packing them too closely, is that the body gets a bit more comfortable being like, I know this game, like, and we just did this, and I don't know if I want to do this right now. And it's adapted to the way that you got there. And so
the next diet phase is harder and it sucks more.
Yeah. And so you have to kind of introduce that other stuff in there to balance it out so that we can build up the resiliency to dive into another phase of it. Because if we're not spacing it out hugely, like a year between dieting phases or something like that, you better hope we didn't get super low, because eventually we're just going to get to a place where your body's fully adapted. And it's like, sure, if you want me to live off of 1,200 calories, fuck it, I'll do it. Like it will figure out a way to live that way. It just isn't going to be very fun.
And I think like there's different things to consider here too, because I know we all kind of do this day in and day out, but we talk about resistance training in the gym. There are different ways to resistance train. Just because you're not in the gym doesn't necessarily mean you're not resistance training. You can do banded stuff. You can do plyometric work. Like, so you can still do other stuff that builds muscle and keeps your bone density healthy and helps with those kind of things, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to the gym 5 days a week. Maybe you go to the gym 2 days a week and you enjoy doing, boxing or kickboxing, karate, whatever, or you enjoy kayaking and doing that kind of stuff. Because I think we always try to talk a lot about like, all right, minimize cardio. But if you're somebody that loves cardio, and cardio is what makes your heart like go pitter patter and be on fire, guess what? Minimal cardio for you is going to be different than minimal cardio for me.
Yeah.
And so I do think that it's important to understand all things in context, because if it's not realistic for you, it's probably not the best idea. We have to find something that works for you as an individual. So if that means you want to have, 3 hours of running every week, I don't know how much you do, Christina, but right, then we need to figure out how do we make it work with 3 hours of running each week so that you can live a fulfilling life doing the things that you want to do and that you're passionate about. And I think one of the other things is we talk about reversing, but very rarely do we talk about like rate of gain and what that means.
Right.
I think, on the other side of things, it's probably a little bit more talked about in terms of maybe like prep clients and people coming out. But say we went from, 300 pounds to 230 pounds, right? Well, do we need to regain weight back at that point? It's not the same as somebody who's, like when I was 166 pounds at 5'10" last year, like I needed to regain weight at that point. But that might not necessarily be the case for everybody. So I know I have like, if we need to regain weight or, if we're reversing, sometimes it's just the truth of the matter, the kind of range that I like. But is there a range that either of you are looking for when you're like, okay, what's an acceptable rate of weight gain here to know that we're not too far off track and we're in control that like you feel comfortable with?
I think it really depends on the client. Because like you said, Stephen, like if you're really lean and you're you're in a place where you're not super healthy, right, in terms of like your intake or whatever, your body fat levels, you kind of feel bony, like then that rate of gain will be looking really a lot different than someone who we got lifestyle, we got like kind of lean, and that's great, but their mindset's in a really great spot. And they might gain, let's say, I don't know, a quarter of a pound to a pound a week, but just from like carbs and water, and assessing what they physically look like their pictures and, their measurements also matter, right? Are your measurements very slowly going up, but all over your body, and you're still feeling really healthy and you're able to manage social situations really well, or like dinners out or whatever, where our mindset's in a great spot. That's really different than someone who maybe got to a really lean state, or even actually a client of mine who got to a good body composition level. She's not a competitor, but her mindset and like her mental state's really struggling with the diet. And so we actually ended the diet early, and we're giving her more food more frequently to help with that mindset piece, and like fatigue level. And her body weight's going up about half a pound, almost a pound a week, but that was initially. Now it's really slowing down. We're about 4 weeks after the dieting phase, and her body composition is still in a good place. So yeah. And then I've had clients that just maintain because they can.
Yeah. I usually talk, so, 90% of the clients I work with are going to be lifestyle that are going to start off probably at a place where they have a decent amount of weight to lose, right? And we're trying to get to a place where competitors would probably be like, I can't be there. Like that would make them nervous. Like, which
off-season? What do you mean?
Yeah, but like, it's funny because I noticed.
That's very clear. That's not necessarily the most fair or realistic thing, because most competitors want to stay at a place where they're on that line of how can I be healthy enough, but the leanest absolute possible.
Right. Yeah, that's why I'm like, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And remember that it's a range. So like you can be healthy in a range of weights. It's not a specific number.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, well, I have a lot of people I've noticed this year. And I think, so I noticed like my Lifetime is offering a lot more of different, like measurements and stuff like that. They're doing different forms of body fat measurements now. They're doing like the RMR testing. They're doing like all this different stuff at the gym. At the same exact time, I have noticed way more people coming to me with like very detailed reports of their body fat percentages and stuff like that. And so then they're like, this is the body fat percentage I have to be. Like, I will not be happy until I am no more than 17% body fat, like as a woman, right? And then I also have other people where they're like, I swear if I'm over this, like I'm going to lose my mind. And so it's funny because I feel like a lot of my people end up in like two different camps kind of, right? Where like one person would be so stoked to be at that place. And then I have someone else who's like, if I get there, I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm like, but that's a place a lot of people would be happy with. Right. And so in general, if we've gotten to a place where it's super livable, right? Like I don't have very many clients that are ever going to get to a place where like their butt hurts sitting in a chair the way it does when you're super lean, right? Like I'm not taking people there. And I also have like hard marks where like I just won't take people below certain places in any diet if their calories, then I'm just like, we're done. I don't care if you've registered for something, we're done. And so in that, knowing that like we don't get super crazy vulnerable because we're not in those places, we don't need to, I still talk to everybody about anticipating that we're probably going to see anywhere between at least 3 to maybe 7 or 8 pounds as a like that we might sit in this place. And then going off of waist for the most part, if we gain back a whole inch, then I'll start to be like, are we respecting our reverse phase the same way that we respected our diet? Like if this is really important to you, then, if we've gained an inch back already, then I'm starting to wonder, like, are we talking about
especially in relation to the other measurements too?
Right. But in general, I mean, if we've had, say it's somebody where we went from like 180 pounds to 150 pounds through no matter like what the time frame is, right? And they're looking super hot at like 150, then I don't think that we need to put on more than an inch on their waist for the most part, if that's where they want to live, right? Like we can incorporate all of the other things, like getting used to having untracked meals. We can get food to a really good place. We can push athleticism in whatever method that they want to. And we probably don't really need to exceed that. And if we have, then that's where like, we'll talk like, are we cool here? If they're not saying anything bad about it, then I'm not going to say anything bad about it, like,
I'm always paying attention to their language that they use in their check-ins too. Like about their bodies or about the process or about food. And honestly, Stephen can attest to this. Like I know about this shit because I was that person. Like I what?
How many years has it been now?
What? I was never there. But like I feel like I was that person that would obsess about the small stupid shit, and my stress was super high about like hitting my protein to the freaking gram for specific meals. And
Which can I real quick there? By the way, in case you guys are unaware, here in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, who oversees the label for all nutrition stuff, they allow for up to a 20% error ratio on that, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, there is literally 0 point in trying to zero out your macros and be quote unquote perfect, because it doesn't exist. You might think you are, but it's not a thing. So, like, a little bit of leeway is probably okay.
Yeah. Like it doesn't. I tell my clients, like, if we're really, really being detailed, it's like 3 to 5 grams. Like that's a lot. Like that's like within 3 to 5 grams of the macro numbers that I give you. If we're like 5 to 10 on either side, we're good.
Yeah.
Fats maybe be a little closer because fats are double the amount of calories than protein and carbs. Okay, cool. But like if you're within that, Like, don't worry that you're 43 calories higher. I'm always like, dude, that's a rice cake. Like, that's a literal rice cake. Anyways, I
If you
always,
eat one of those, you know that they're pretty much just air.
yeah.
Right.
But that goes down to the language stuff in their check-ins. If they are really focused on the scale or a social situation that they feel like they fucked up in there because they went over their fats by 5 grams, or like, I don't know, I can go on this tangent forever, but it's about the language thing. And now I forget what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, so we just started using the new check-in system. Stephen and I have started. So I have a lot of clients they're on it now, and I'm loving the different little sliding scales and stuff that they have, because I feel like it's not like that it trips people up, but it'll be funny because maybe they'll put one thing where they're like, oh, I'm like, things are bad or something like that. And then you'll see all the other ones and they're like good. And it's like, but is this because you're freaking out about like the one thing? Because you're saying like training is great, sleep is great, you're being consistent, but like, what is this bad thing like that's happening with stuff? And so, yeah, having the opportunity to see more of that. And I mean, my clients know that like, I like to keep our check-ins like in happy land, like as much as possible. So I'll get on them where I'm like, stop talking shit about my client, like in your thing, like, because this isn't fair and we're not going to talk to ourselves this way. And like, we need to focus on that kind of stuff. And I mean, that does become a big indicator of what I'm going to be comfortable with us doing next and stuff like that, because we need to focus on getting that to be a nicer place, because nobody hated themselves into a body that they were happier living in. Like, it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, and I think that's what I look for mostly with language. So obviously there's like buzzwords that I'm looking for, like fatigued or tired, or like I've been more irritable, those kind of things. But normally when I'm looking at buzzwords for how somebody's doing, it's how they're talking about themselves and how they see themselves. Like, it's crazy when I see somebody, and it happens on a regular basis, who has lost 15, 20 pounds, and they're at the end of the dieting phase and like, oh, now I feel fat. And they didn't say that before the dieting phase. So you literally held 10, 15 pounds more body fat X amount of weeks ago, and you didn't feel fat. But now that we've lost that, now all of a sudden these thoughts and feelings are coming in. Like, we need to figure out, like, that's not okay. Because all objective things would say we should feel less of those things, not more of those things. And so, obviously there's a point where if people are putting on weight at a higher rate, or they've been out of a dieting phase for a long time and they have put on more weight, maybe those things like, hey, I'm just not quite as comfortable. I think that's probably fair and realistic. Because normally if we're in a good place and we feel healthy and we're still trying to push calories, I'm looking for what we're trying to build muscle, maybe 0.1, 0.2 pounds a week on average, maybe about a pound per month. You don't really probably need to gain a significant amount of weight. Like, the traditional bulk is
Right.
kind of like silly, in my opinion.
Right.
You're just not going to put on tons of muscle unless you're brand new. It just doesn't happen.
And that's something I feel like a lot of people misunderstand too, is that like, because I would see that in the challenge where people would say like, oh, we went, or like something happened and I haven't been checking in with you guys. It's been like 10 days and the scale's up 3 pounds, but I'm sure it's muscle or something. Or it would go the opposite way, where they'd be like, I've been sick and I haven't been able to work out, and I'm down 4 pounds and I'm sure I've lost all my muscle or something. And it's like, it doesn't really go that fast in either direction when it comes to stuff.
Unless you get surgery.
Right.
I had a real teensy leg for a bit there. It's still way smaller, but
that's true. Well, but that's the thing, is you have to be like totally immobile. And there was like I want to say there was like a study they did like a while back where you had to be like laying in bed, like using a bedpan kind of immobile, and it's
literally
still
doing nothing for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks for you to
Mhm.
start to see atrophy where you're not even getting out to go to the bathroom. And so like, as long as you're still moving around and you're eating and things like that, like you should be good to go. But yeah, when I said like that 3 to 7-ish pounds with stuff, that's what I usually prepare people for. Like when we get to maintenance, we might see that kind of fluctuation. I don't want to see it coming on right away, but that, you know, I'll say like when we're done with this, we're back at maintenance calories, I would anticipate we might be hanging out somewhere close to there. But, you know, my goal is always to try and keep us as close as possible. But I think sometimes breaking down just like the math can help, right? Where like if you're talking to someone and they're like, well, why is it going up? And it's like, well, you said you're lifting more weights, like you're stronger. The goal was to put muscle on. We're eating twice as many carbs as you were at the bottom of your diet. And we've been able to add in some fats and things like that. Like 1 + 1 = 2. Like, and sometimes we're going to see that increase. And the goal is that we're putting in the work to lead us to where we want to be. So if the goal is muscle and putting that on, then you sure as shit better be busting your ass in the gym with that. You know, for me, like you brought up running, Stephen, my stuff is like backwards, right? Where if I'm in a running phase, like I'm 31 weeks out from my next marathon, like I don't get to try and lose body fat anymore. Like I have to start eating more to support the cardio. And then because I want
Performance.
what?
Yes, performance
Right.
based. Yes.
Exactly. And I was so glad. I just had a client run a marathon, and we didn't get calories near as high as I wanted them to, but they were definitely higher than they were before. And she was like, thank you, I feel so much better. And I was like, yeah, you would have felt like trash like after all of that. And like it was so great to not have her feel beat up or like injured afterwards and things like that. And so that's one thing I love for after a dieting phase. Pick something. Pick that you want to squat your body weight or something like that, and then chase that rabbit for a really long time. Or, you know, if you're going to run a marathon, like I'm going to feed you a shit ton of food, like, and we're going to work on that. And I think it really helps to find this athletic piece to it, so that on the bad body image days where you're like, I shouldn't be eating this much food, this is crazy, I hate myself in the mirror because the scale went up 0.5 pound. And then it's like, yeah, but you went and benched 100 pounds for reps today. And like, you can kind of have that thing where it's like, okay, well, this is weird and uncomfortable, but like I did something really cool and that makes me happy. And have that other thing to like give your monkey brain to hold on to.
You mean a
Yeah.
glitter, right? Because you're a lady and it's glitter. So like if you're eating more, you're just full of more glitter, whereas boys are full of more poop.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
like rainbows and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the fact of the matter is, just because the diet's over doesn't mean you stop getting better.
Yeah.
Like people equate a fat loss phase to
Best
doing good and I'm getting better. And then like nothing else matters after that, which like makes no sense to me. Like there's so many other areas that you can progress through your health and fitness journey. And especially if you are someone who has a lot of weight to lose, you're probably going to need to do that in multiple phases, right? Like you need to lose the 40 pounds and then we get like some diet fatigue, whatever. We reverse, we take a break and then we diet again. But that break isn't like 3 weeks. It's a little bit longer. We already talked about the time frame. So if you determine that you're only going to get better in a fat loss phase, then that's the fact of the matter, is you're only ever going to get better, quote unquote, better in a fat loss phase. A mindset shift has to happen, that there are opportunities to progress and have goals and improve your physique and improve your mental health and improve the way that you feel in your body and your relationships with people and food. That doesn't stop. There's endless possibilities for you to continue to improve and get better. It's not just during the fat loss phase.
And I would say that, so I want to make 2 big points here. Is one, normally the only thing in life that quote unquote gets better in a fat loss phase is that you probably get less body fat and the scale goes down. Yeah. Nothing else really gets better. You don't all of a sudden get a ton more energy. Maybe you started a diet and you do feel more energetic, but it's probably because you're eating more nutrient dense foods. You have better micronutrient intake, so you're fueling your body better. And you're doing the things to be active, which are helping with that, right? So you might associate that with feeling better, but the actual reductions of calories to like make body fat loss happen isn't actually making you feel better. You don't think better. You don't perform better at work all of a sudden. Like it makes those things all more difficult. So, you know, when do we
sometimes your body image, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude. But yeah, so like life actually gets better in the position of I'm eating enough calories to at least maintain, to sleep well, to recover well, and to like feel good, to fuel performance, so to speak. And I do understand it. And I think objectively, when we're like, oh yeah, I'm only going to feel good if the scale says X or if the scale says Y or the scale says Z. When somebody else tells us that, it's very easy for us to outwardly be like, oh, well, that's external. So that doesn't make sense. That's silly. Like, come on. But I do think that there has been so much emphasis placed on simply this number on the scale. Just historically speaking, thin is in, like, you know, back when we've gone through all the runway model stuff and how they've been addressed and the body positivity, that like, it's hard for me to realistically say, like, I don't get it, but I do get it. Because we have literally put people into this position where they associate their worth with the number on the scale.
Yeah.
And they're not the same. The number on the scale is a measure of mass. That's it. It doesn't delineate between fat. It doesn't delineate between water. It doesn't delineate between muscle or how much hair you have. I'm thinking about growing the beard and the mustache back, if you weren't aware.
I'm on team beard and mustache for sure.
Most people are. But it doesn't delineate between those things, right? And we as human beings, like our feelings are complex. I have to talk about something with Jill for an hour before I finally get to the real root of why I feel the way I feel a lot of the times, right? Because you go through all this superficial stuff. But I think for a lot of us, recognizing that and really reiterating that fact to ourselves to say, the scale is not a determinant of worth.
Yeah.
And so what is success for me? Is it feeling good? Is it feeling energetic? Is it succeeding in my career? Is it being a good parent? Is it being somebody who has the ability to make time to spend with family or other loved ones, whatever? Good. Well, if we're having to do an hour of cardio every day, it's going to be harder to do those things and make time. If we are dieting really hard all the time and don't have energy, and don't have like a proper nutrition and nourishment, those things are going to be really hard. So I do think it's like really important that we as like, I don't know, fitness professionals, I guess is what we would be called, right? That we don't lose sight of that and that we don't let you guys lose sight of that. That, yeah, the number on the scale, we're not saying it doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't dictate your worth. And there are a lot of other really amazing things in life that all of these successes can come from when we're allowing ourselves to truly flourish and fueling that appropriately. And I think that's one of the cool things about the post diet that we very often forget and fail to realize is that there are so many amazing, wonderful things that we can do, that we can be passionate about, succeed in, and make progress in, that don't require us to reduce calories, increase output, and do all the like the diet stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know like Paul would be able to attest to like all the years that we worked together, that if I hit the 140s, I would have a fucking coronary. And like, which is funny because when Vic and I got married, like I worked so hard to get to like 148, like 13 years ago. That was my, like, I can't get below 150. My body just likes to be 150. And then, you know, did my first show after having Cora, saw that I could get to the teens, which is insane when like at 5'7", right? But then you see like, oh, well, I can get there. And then it was like, if I gained to get back to 140, like all hell would break loose. And it was like, everything's ruined, when like realistically not that much. I would be wearing the same clothes like comfortably and be pissed off about that. And so that's something where I always try to be careful with, like, I'll be in a check-in and be like, this doesn't stress me out. Like, I'll say that and say, I understand it's stressing you out, but like, and I get that. And it's not my number. So like, that's why I can say it doesn't stress me out. I understand that it is for you. Let's make sure we're paying attention to all of these like other things in our lifestyle. Like if this number is something that's going to make the world come crashing down, what can we do to make sure we don't go further than this? Or like, what conversations do we need to have about like finding comfort there if it's something that maybe we do need to go past? And then let's look at everything else. Like that's why like the measurements and knowing what's going on in workouts, because you know, as a mom of 4 and like things like that, yes, my family means a shit ton to me, but those are also like boxes that are going to get checked, and like no matter what, right? Like I'm going to pour into them as much as possible with things. So really for me, when it comes to like this sphere, like I have to have the fact that I'm back to lifting a certain amount. I have to have like, I know I'm capable of running this much distance at this much time, because those things have become very important to who Christina is, where like outside of mom, I like knowing that I have these performance capabilities. And when those go away, I've thankfully, after many years of being in this world, those mean more to me, where like now, you know, I chill at like 142, 143. And I know if I worked to get to the 138 that I used to think was so perfect, I would, you know, not be sharing a bottle of red with my husband, or I wouldn't be running as well, or like something like that. Like I'd have to focus so hard. And sometimes it's not to focus so hard with that, like if there's no reason to. And so that's where like this time, post diet, post challenge or whatever, I think it's smart, you know, if you have continued goals, think about the fact like the next one is planned for February. How much life can we live within this lifestyle before we do dial down again? You know, let's get used to date nights where it isn't a reason to order 4 appetizers, our entree, and then we're going to have dessert, and we're going to have a cocktail with each thing that comes out. Like, you know, like maybe we're learning to dial that in and to still feel comfortable the next morning when we wake up. We're not hungover. We don't feel like a sodium bomb or something like that. And work on incorporating the kinds of things that were important to us pre-diet that maybe got us to where a place that we didn't want to be. How do we have those back in it with, you know, some control on it, you know, with not letting it get away from us, and then learn how to just keep that rolling.
Well, and it's kind of like becoming comfortable in the discomfort of this lifestyle, right? Or of those habits and behaviors that you've accumulated to get you to where you are happy with, comfortable with, or wherever you are. Because people love to live in the all or nothing. They are already like down to frickin' die and diet. And but then are also equally uncomfortable on the other side, right? Where they're eating to their heart's content and now not fitting in any of their clothes. And they also feel lethargic because anyways, like, I think that it's working with our clients around what this new uncomfortable feels like, and finding what thrives and what they enjoy, and how amazing they feel when they go out to eat, but they choose a steak tenderloin with a side salad, and maybe they have, you know, soda water or whatever, but then they share a dessert with their loved one, and they have this amazing evening where they still feel good and sexy, and they want to go home and have some adult time, and great, that's wonderful. And they wake up and they go and they train the next day because they don't feel disgusting.
Right.
How did that feel? What went well? What didn't go well? Oh, like, how can we repeat this? Right? So I always it's about living in this like gray area, and what that looks like for everybody is very different. So I always ask my clients like hella questions on what happened leading up to this. How did you feel? What kind of self-talk did you have in this time? Like, did you talk to your support people about that? How did that conversation go? How did that like family event go? What were you thinking about? How did you feel afterwards? Blah, blah, blah. It's important to kind of bring awareness around these things and the enjoyment factor of, now we're living in the gray, but like, what do we love about the gray?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll try and make this one quick because it's like a big thing, but it's also something that we can probably try and simplify, is that you have to keep the main things your main things. And so I think, have a lot of freedoms that maybe most people don't have. And I say this because I think about like growing up with a single mom who was having to work like 70 to 80 hours a week to make sure that we were supported financially. And so, whereas, yeah, it's probably more reasonable for me because I get to work from home and I'm a fitness person and it's what we do, right? I can make time and it's a priority and it's kind of part of my job. But understanding where your life is at. Is it important to have activity? Hell yeah. Of course it is. It really matters for your health. But if you can get in 1 or 2 weight training sessions a week and you can get in 10 or 12,000 steps a day, and like that gives you enough, and now you have the time to prioritize your family or your job or whatever it is you need to do, like that's awesome. That's amazing. Like that is a beautiful thing and a huge win. And so I also think that it's very important for you guys to understand, like, your non-negotiables may be different. What you have to do may be different than what myself or Jessica or Christina or anybody else has to do to make it work. And then it's finding the best that we can do while keeping the main things the main things. So yours may look very different than ours, and like that's cool, that's okay. Like that can still be absolutely every single bit just as much of a win, if not more sometimes. So I do think it's important to recognize, like, hey, you're a single mom, you got 2 kids, and you're having to work 80 hours a week to support them. What's going to be realistic for you is going to be different than what's realistic for me. That's okay, and you have to give yourself some grace and be okay with that.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great stopping point, is to just keep that in mind, that it's life, right? Like it's supposed to be a lifestyle. It's not just like, you don't want to live in that vacuum forever. That's not fun. Like that's where we end up with all the issues we talked about. I'm a little disappointed we only got to 3 awkward moments. I really
we had more before we started.
Huh?
We had more before we started, before we hit record.
Easily. That's true. We topped 7 because you guys missed out on the first like 18 minutes where we were like, we should probably get started on this.
We're missing so much good content.
I know. But it was so random that I was like, I don't know if we should just like dive in. Okay, so
comment. Do you guys like that stuff? Do you like us just like BSing sometimes, like to start stuff off with? Like,
right.
Should we do more of that?
Yeah, because we can fulfill that need if you like it.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
We're really good at it.
Before we go, I wanted to make sure, especially because Jess, you're the person. We have Command the Stage opened up with everything, which lifestyle wise, this might be like, why are they talking about this at all? Right. But what I think is interesting about this event is it is like focused more towards like people who want to compete and stuff like that. But if you are a lifestyle client who's maybe kind of considering, do I want to be a part of that world? Is that something that I would ever be interested in? It is something that they could go and like learn from people who like very much know their shit when it comes to that. And it's just like fun people. So I haven't been to, since it got rebranded over to like specifically Command the Stage, I haven't been to it, but I'd been to ones beforehand. So like, why don't you just tell us a little bit, Jess, before we go?
It is competitor focused, but it's open to individuals who have not competed before. I have a client who might go, but she's never competed before. And it's honestly, it's a weekend of fun. You get to hopefully meet your coach in person. You get to create that community about people who just like the weird stuff that you like. You know, like bodybuilding is kind of weird. It is. It really
You'll
is.
see Tupperware there.
Oh, absolutely. There will probably be people in prep. But you know, we all get in Thursday night. It's a great evening to just like meet everyone. It's very social. It's very social based, but then it's also very educational. So we have Pro Physique coaches as well as special guests coming and giving talks. So it's again information based. So the Friday and Saturday morning, it's very seminar focused. We sit, we listen, we educate. People are giving presentations. And then the afternoons are specifically like training and posing focused. So it will be in a gym and you'll be training with the coaches. You'll be posing with national judges, and Paul DeRaja will be there, obviously. And we have lots of amazing sponsors as well that we're doing big giveaways at the end of the weekend. And Friday and Saturday night are always just super social, fun dinners. We cater everything. It'll be a really good time. So if you have questions, reach out to me over social media or email me, jessica@prophysique.com. If you have specific questions, I will be happy to answer, or you can go to the website, but the website's kind of vague. So if you have specific questions, you can ask me directly.
Yep. And if you comment here on I said here, but it's on different platforms, but if you leave a comment, we'll see that. And then we can pass it along and get you things answered too. But if you're watching this on YouTube, I can always make sure those are the ones that I take a peek at. And then Lexi normally sees anything left on the other platforms. And so we will make sure that if you leave a question here, that it gets passed along and we get you an answer on stuff. So just let us know. You know where to find us, and we'll be back next week.
Comment, pass.
What?
You said pass along. I was just like, comment, pass.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
Forward.
Good job with the score. Okay.
That's one.
Thank you for making sure that we did our very best to hit that limit. So, all right, friends, we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.